Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 26 Beta 5 and Public Beta 2 have been out for a few days, and iOS 18.6 has been out for over a week and a half at this point. But there's even more to talk about since the iOS 26 Beta 5 is out What's New video. We'll talk about the latest Apple releases and Apple news, as well as some new features and the overall experience. Not just my experience on the 16 Pro Max, but your experience based off the YouTube community poll on the post page. At the time of this video, there's over 15,000 votes and 176 comments. I've gone over all the comments to determine what the overall experience is like for everyone, and be sure to stick around toward the end of the video where I'll read some of your comments as well. Now, Apple is planning to make their own sensors in the near future in their own cameras for their iPhones. And this is going to be in the United States, it seems, with Samsung at a facility in Texas, according to the Financial Times. This does match some of the rumors about Apple working on a really nice new image sensor. That's something that could be even better than what we have in sensors like the one I'm recording with now, and maybe could see closer to what the eye could see with up to 20 stops of dynamic range. So we'll have to wait and see, but they're planning to work with Samsung to get those new sensors made in the United States. Predictably, to help avoid tariffs and increased prices, Tim Cook also said Apple will invest another $100 billion into manufacturing in the USA, on top of the $500 billion it already committed, and at the same time gifted the president a round piece of glass that sits atop a 24-karat base designed by Apple, which turned out to be quite controversial. This is due to Tim Cook also saying that every iPhone and Apple Watch sold around the world soon will have glass that is made in the USA in partnership with Corning. Tim said, "Corning is a storied American company, and we're thrilled to work together to build the largest and most advanced production line ever created for smartphone glass. And while tariffs may still impact phone prices, the new chip tariff apparently won't apply to Apple, as it predictably made a deal to invest in USA manufacturing to get around them." OpenAI introduced and updated their models to version 5 this week with ChatGPT 5. This allows for things such as more accuracy, being smarter, faster, and more useful. Sam Altman said that ChatGPT 5 is similar to iPhone's leap from normal displays to Retina displays in the iPhone 4. ChatGPT 5 will also work with Apple Intelligence when iOS 26 launches next month, as confirmed by 9to5Mac. So currently, if you want to use Apple Intelligence, you can do that, but it won't necessarily use the latest models. However, those currently having issues with ChatGPT 5 can now stay on GPT-4 for now. So there's been some complaints according to the Wall Street Journal. So let me know if you're using ChatGPT, Gemini, or something else. Now, as far as features and things that have been updated this week, Apple added cycling directions and maps in Taiwan and Hong Kong. If we go into Maps, and within Maps, you can see I have directions here where it would take you an hour and a half by car. I'm not familiar with this area, but you can get cycling directions now where it will show not only the time it takes, the steps to get there, but also the elevation climb as well. So that's available again in Taiwan and Hong Kong. Apple also released a new wallpaper this week called Here's to the Dreamers. It works well with spatial scenes in iOS 26 and was released on a website saying Here's to the Dreamers, where they're showcasing 5 creators from Southeast Asia. So I'll link this in the description below, but you can see the wallpaper here if you want to download it. You can go ahead and download now, and then if we go in Save to Photos, we'll go into Photos here. Now you can see the wallpaper here, and if I turn it into a spatial scene, it has quite a bit of depth, and you can see that as I move it around here. So again, I'll link this in the description below. Now, as far as new features found in iOS 26 Beta 5, well, there's a new charging case pop-up showing the charging status of the case itself. And when the AirPods are connected, when you connect them for the first time, you may get a little pop-up that actually looks like this. It says Charging AirPods. The AirPods charging case now more clearly indicates charging status, and AirPods will remind you when it's time to charge. You'll see it shows charged when it's green, charging the AirPods themselves, or charging the case. So that's a little bit of an update as to what the actual light represents. Within the Wallet app, there's an update. You'll see with Beta 4 on the left, Beta 5 on the right, the actual Add to Wallet screen has an update. It looks a little bit different. The text is to the left now, where it says keep all cards, keys, and passes you use every day all in one place. So it just looks a little bit different. Within the Fitness app, again, Beta 5 is on the right, you can see Fitness has a new icon. So again, they keep refining things throughout. If we go into the Phone app, if we choose the Select option at the top, we now have a Clear All button. So we can clear them all at once, or any that we've selected. So you'll see it says clear all recents. All recent calls will be deleted from all of your devices. So you have that option if you want to use it now. If we go into the Tips app, there's a slight change here. So we'll let it load, go to the bottom, and you'll see there's a new option at the very bottom that says Get Support, Step-by-Step Help. If we go into that, you'll see we now have the option for mail, battery, or other things to get guided and personalized support right from your iPhone. So if we go into AirPods, it says Checking for Connected AirPods, and then you can select which ones you want to talk about, and then maybe say one isn't working, so you can get guided help throughout Tips. A small change within Messages is the typing indicator is now more bold. While something's being updated, you can actually prioritize the update if you have multiple apps installing at once. So that's something they've brought back if you're installing the app or updating them. In the Remote app, if you have the direction option enabled, you'll see that the center is now a circle instead of an app icon outline. Something else Apple is adding to Maps has to do with predictive Siri features that can determine when you're about to travel and then show suggestions for cellular connectivity. This will let you know what you can do when you're out of your home country. So that's something that's being added that you may see pop up if you're running the beta. Now, if you're using the Home app, they've updated this as well. So we'll go into Home here. And if you're using Home with certain controls, I don't actually have those controls, but if you are using them with specific controls, the overall look is different for climate controls. So if you have a thermostat or something you're using with it, it should look a little different. If you're using Apple CarPlay and maybe you're using it with a different car such as a Honda, Toyota, BMW, the stock app icon for, say, BMW will now conform to what you have set as far as clear icons or not. So if you're using the clear icons, they'll now change to match that on CarPlay as well. So that should be working properly now. Also, a couple things worth noting in the code from my friend Steve Mosier is the ECG app has a glassier look to it in the code, so you can see that here on the left. And then iOS 26 Beta 5 includes new Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, and Rotten Tomatoes icons, so you can see those here. So if you want to check it out, and additionally, you'll see it includes icons for plastic, tortoise, and wood. So maybe they'll be used for desired frame materials for future Apple glasses, or maybe for Apple CarPlay Ultra, we don't really know. Within iPadOS 26 Beta 5, there's two things worth mentioning. If we go into Settings, you'll see here we can get rid of the menu bar here on the left now if we want to do that. And also, if we go into Multitasking and Gestures, if we're under Windowed Apps, we now have a new gesture, Swipe to Reveal Menu Bar. It says Swipe from top center of the screen to reveal a menu bar. So we can do that, and now we have the menu bar. If you don't want that to show up, you of course can just turn it off and it won't show anymore. So that's something new if you want to use it. Something else that's a little bit controversial has to do with the new iPhone 17. I showed all of the new colors that supposedly will be available with the iPhone 17 in September, and you can see this is what they look like with the 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max. The overall camera bar, and these are dummies, they're non-functioning, they're just hopefully a representative of what we might see. We don't know 100%, but usually they're fairly accurate. And you can see this giant camera bar. Now, I think most people wouldn't mind this if it would allow the phone to sit flat, but it doesn't because the actual cameras protrude out of the back a little bit. So you'll see it doesn't sit flat because of that, and if the bar was large enough to allow that to maybe sit flat, I don't think people would mind it as much. However, we don't know why it's here or what other functions it could have, but we do seem to think we're going to have some new colors with aluminum or aluminium in blue and orange. Some people really like these colors, and again, I've tried to make these videos as color accurate as possible. Some people really dislike the colors, but I actually like the blue color. I may pick this one up, or orange, we'll have to wait and see. But if it looks a little bit like this, well, maybe I won't. I'm not sure. I have to see what the actual shades look like once it's released. But let me know what you think about that in the comments below. However, the iPhone 17 release event could be as soon as September 9th. That's what many people have been saying, is it could be September 9th based on carrier documents that were released, but it could also be September 8th, as typically it's on a Monday. We don't have an exact date, and of course we'll know more about that toward the end of August typically when Apple sends out invites and lets people know when the next event is. Now, as far as releases this week, well, the first thing to mention is Apple stopped signing iOS 18.5. That means you can only downgrade to iOS 18.6. You can no longer install iOS 18.5. So there's no way to do that. Maybe we'll get a new update soon, as Apple did release a new Mac version, but no iOS version, as far as testing for beta testers. They released macOS 15.7 RC, so almost a finalized version, but no iOS 18.7 RC, so maybe we'll see that this coming week. Apple also released an update for their MagSafe adapter. So if you're using the 25-watt MagSafe adapter that I have here, you can tell this because it has a braided cord here. This is the 25-watt version. There's actually an update for it, and it typically updates just while it's connected to the phone. It updates on its own. They don't give any notes as to what it does, but there is an update for it, and it brings it to version 2A168. You can actually find that while it's connected in your settings. Let's get out of this. We'll go to General and then About. And if you scroll down, you'll actually see Apple MagSafe Charger. And you'll see mine isn't updated yet. So version 2A168 is apparently the latest one, and mine's not updated. But let me know if you updated yours if you have one of these adapters as well. Now, I do believe we're on a weekly cycle when it comes to iOS 26 now, which means we could see iOS 26 Beta 6 as soon as Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. It just depends when it's ready, but basically Monday or Tuesday is when I would expect it. And then, of course, iOS 26 Public Beta 3 I would expect as soon as maybe a day or two after that, just like they did this previous week. So that's what I would expect coming up. I would also expect betas from here on out every single week if they continue to do what they've done in the past, with a release candidate toward the end of August or early September, and a final release typically right around the iPhone 17 date. So that's what we can expect as far as that goes. We don't have any concrete data about that, but I would expect them to release it like they normally do. Now, as far as the iOS 18.6 experience, let's take a look at that. Now, with iOS 18.6, the good news is there's not a whole lot new to talk about since last week's follow-up. iOS 18.6 is mostly a very solid experience with just a couple small issues for a few people. For example, notifications still stutter when stacked sometimes. I don't have any stacked right now, but if they're stacked on top of each other, sometimes they stutter when they sort of expand out. That seems to be fixed in iOS 26. The wallpaper bug still exists where it can sort of darken. You can see that here. Again, that seems to be fixed in iOS 26. And then also apps seem to be problematic, but not because of iOS. For example, YouTube is still problematic with people not receiving notifications or odd issues with subtitles and sometimes black screens where the video doesn't play. So there's some weird issues there, but those need to be updated by the app developers. So it doesn't seem to be related to iOS 18.6. So there's good news there. We'll talk about the battery life though in just a moment. iOS 26 Beta 5 and Public Beta 2 seem to be pretty decent. Definitely an improvement over Beta 4, but there's some odd issues going on. In particular, I'm hearing a lot of people with screen flicker issues on older iPhones. Now, they typically seem to be OLED phones, not necessarily the LCD phone like the iPhone 11. However, those that are having the issues basically see that in different apps such as Instagram, Photos, and others, where the screen will sort of stutter or flicker from time to time. So if we go into Photos here, you'll see I'm not really seeing anything here, but I have seen this on different devices, and it seems to be on, again, earlier OLED devices. Mostly I'm seeing it there. I did see a couple people report it on iOS 18.6, but I couldn't confirm if maybe they just mistyped which version they were on, as it seems to be an iOS 26 issue. But again, it seems to be happening when switching from light to dark theme sometimes, and also some people say the actual fix is just to put it below 50% brightness, or also turn on low power mode, which is a bit odd. Maybe it's turning off Pro Motion and that's fixing the issue, but we really don't know at this point. There's still quite a bit of stuttering, as you may have already seen throughout. Sometimes Pro Motion is nice and smooth. You can definitely tell it ramps up and down, but then other times, just like right now, it seems like it's slow and maybe just stuttering. Now, I don't know if this has to do with adaptive power mode or something else, but in general, it seems to be smooth sometimes, and then sometimes it's not. There's also some issues with apps that aren't updated to support iOS 26 yet, which definitely is an issue, of course, since they can't update them until Apple releases it. So usually before the release of iOS 26, Apple allows developers to submit their apps. So right now you can't really fault the app developers, so there's definitely some issues going on there with things such as Instagram, Discord, Snapchat, and others. I also had the phone respring on me, which means it reboots to the home screen again, and then you log in. And also there's slow touch response sometimes. So you go in and sometimes you have to tap a couple times for it to work. In particular, I thought this was fixed before, but if we go to customize, you'll see I can tap it a couple times and nothing happens. Then you tap it again and it works. So definitely something that needs to be fixed that hasn't been resolved just yet. Apple CarPlay is still an issue for some where it won't even work. For me, it works just fine, but there's still visual spacing issues with some of the different icons and different things with text inside. And some of the bubbles are sort of misaligned with text as well for some. Overall, it looks okay for me, but again, many people are having issues with this, and it doesn't seem to be any specific car necessarily. I'm hearing it from Honda users, Toyota users, people with third-party or aftermarket head units for their phones and cars combined, and just all sorts of problems overall. Also, watchOS notifications seem to be an issue for some as well, where they report that when changing focus modes, sometimes the notifications disappear on the Apple Watch. We'll go back here. Sometimes they just disappear when you're in a different focus mode, but they're still present on the iPhone. So again, some odd issues. It's still a work in progress, and it is still a beta. When it comes to overall performance, well, I showed you that a little bit. It's great on iOS 18.6, but on iOS 26, especially on older phones, it seems to be a little bit slow. Pro Motion isn't ramping up and down like I mentioned. Opening apps seems to be okay, but there's general stutters and sometimes crashes throughout. So you'll see there, if we go into it, let it load, go back out. Sometimes it's just generally very slow. Other times it's fine. I did a hard reboot and it seemed to fix it a little bit. But again, we don't know why that's happening, but hopefully they'll fix it before it's released. As far as overall heat and thermals, well, I would say it's definitely improved this week. The phones are not as hot. So let's take a look at that. Both are nice and cool to the touch. But before we do that, as many of you have asked, let's go ahead and take a look at benchmarks and run Geekbench. So we'll heat the phones up a little bit since they're fairly cool to the touch right now. We'll go into Geekbench 6 and let's go ahead and run it. Benchmarks are more than halfway through. Let's go ahead and flip the phone over and take a look at the overall heat on the back. They're both fairly cool to the touch, definitely heated up a little bit, but you'll see here we're at about 41.9 to 42 degrees Celsius on the 16 Pro Max running iOS 26 Beta 5. And at the hottest point on iOS 18.6, we're around 39.4 to 39.5 degrees Celsius overall. So definitely a little bit cooler on the iPhone 16 Pro Max on iOS 18.6, but in general, not too bad. Let's see what we get when these complete. So right now I have pretty terrible results for iOS 26 Beta 5. In fact, I ran this earlier and got better results. You can see that here with the history, where it scored 3,435 for single core compared to 3,262. Again, a little bit earlier, 8,451 compared to 7,773. On iOS 18.6, again, they're a little bit lower than I would expect, and I would expect if I ran this a couple more times, we may get great results. But that's what I'm seeing with Geekbench lately when I'm running the overall benchmark tests. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. Maybe some things are going on in the background. When it comes to battery life, well, iOS 18.6 continues to be pretty good. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. And thanks to Abhishek for sending this in. This is on an iPhone 16e with 100% battery health set to an 80% charge limit. He had 3 hours and 26 minutes of screen on time, 1 hour and 7 minutes of screen off time, and he's only down 5% to 75%. Now, I would have to imagine this has been charged since then. As you can see, it was up to 80, so these are off a little bit. Maybe he just plugged it in. But if we take a look at another day, again, 2 hours and 20 minutes of screen on time, 1 hour and 53 minutes of screen off time, and used about 25% of the battery. So overall, pretty good. Most people are saying 10 to 12 hours on the Pro Max phones, but when it comes to iOS 26 Beta 5, well, it's a little bit of a different story for me. If we go into battery, go to battery health, you'll see I have a maximum capacity of 96% with 290 cycles. If we take a look at the overall battery usage, it hasn't been great. Yesterday, 4 hours and 34 minutes of screen active time, 16 hours and 42 minutes of screen idle time, and I charged multiple times. The day before that, 96% of my battery was used, again charging, but 3 hours and 38 minutes of screen active time, 16 hours and 27 minutes of screen idle time. It went under 20% this time around. So really, I've been getting 3 to 4 hours of screen active time. Not really that great. I even have power mode switched on here with adaptive power, trying that out. Maybe that's some of the slowdown, but overall, it's not seemingly making much of a difference and isn't great battery life overall. Now, as far as what you've had to say with the battery life, before we take a look at your comments, 92% of you said that iOS 18.6 is still good or better than the previous versions. iOS 26 battery is still a concern, but of course it's still a fairly early beta. We should have a few versions left where they can refine that, and we usually get that as we get closer to an RC. Now, as far as your comments, let's take a look at what you had to say. Roan Vekshari 4941 said, I've been using iOS 18.6 since it released, and it's actually very stable like iOS 18.5 was. I decided I'm going to wait for iOS 26 public version to come out. Corey30 says, I've been using Beta 5, Public Beta 2 on my 16 Pro Max for a couple of days now, and it's been pretty decent and actually the first usable version of iOS 26 for daily usage. It's definitely better than Beta 4, Public Beta 1 in terms of performance and overall stability, with multiple bug fixes across the board. While it's still not perfect, it definitely is going in the right direction, still not even close to 18.6, even though many people try to make it seem that way. Willie Seth 740 says, iOS 26 public beta on the 15 Pro Max is quite good so far. Liquid glass is truly impressive, and it feels like iOS operating system is finally becoming more vibrant. The phone doesn't get too hot, and the battery life is decent for a beta release. There are no glitches or issues with the screen responsiveness. I genuinely enjoy the look of iOS. Dimovradu 4938 said, public beta 2 14 Pro Max with 100% battery. Experience pretty good, still having 1 to 2 small bugs, but apart from that, a really good experience. Far better than iOS 18. I keep comparing it with my wife's iOS 18.6 15 Pro, and I enjoy 26 better. A breath of fresh air. George Blair Jr. said, iOS 26 Beta 5 on my 15 Pro Max. The only thing that's really caught my attention is I have to tap the folders at least twice to open them. Other than that, in my short time with it, it's been pretty good. Now, iOS 18.6 is widely considered a stable and reliable release with good performance and battery life, though it has a few minor device-specific bugs like I mentioned before. iOS 26 betas, of course, are still a work in progress, with Beta 5 and Public Beta 2 showing significant improvements over the previous update. There's still work to be done with things such as numerous bugs, lag, and battery issues, but those are typical of pre-release software. So pretty decent overall, but again, still time to go as far as getting things right. So if you're wondering if you should install iOS 18.6 or iOS 26 betas, well, if you just want something stable you don't have to worry about, go with iOS 18.6 if you haven't already. If you want to try out the latest, you can, but I would use iOS 26 Beta 2 from the public beta, not the developer version. If you're trying to basically use something that's more stable, I would hold off until a final release. But if you're a developer or public beta tester, definitely update to the latest version. And developer Beta 5 and public beta 2 are identical. They just give it a day or two to make sure everything's good, and then typically release the same version or a new one if they need to. So I would stick with what you have already if you're looking for something reliable, other than going to 26 betas, but you definitely could do that. So that's everything with iOS 26 Beta 5 and iOS 18.6. Of course, we're waiting for iOS 26 Beta 6 and Public Beta 3. I'm looking forward to see what they do as far as refinements. Hopefully things get much, much better. But let me know what you think about iOS 26, what your favorite update is, what you use most, or maybe you're sticking with iOS 18. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.